There is a particular misery that has no obvious external cause, the misery of being present in a life that feels thin, repetitive, drained of interest, and unable to generate any genuine engagement. We reach for distraction not because we are particularly pleasure-seeking creatures but because the present moment seems to offer nothing worth attending to. William James called this condition a disease, not in any dramatic sense, but in the clinical sense of something that disrupts the normal functioning of a healthy mind, and he had a precise account of both its causes and its cure. Boredom, for James, was not simply the absence of stimulation. It was the failure of attention to connect with what is actually present. The bored person is not someone confronted with a genuinely empty world. They are someone whose attention has lost the flexibility and sensitivity to find what is rich and interesting in the world they inhabit. The problem is not outside. It is in the quality of the attention being brought to experience. James devoted extended treatment in the principles of psychology to the nature of interest and its relationship to attention. His central insight was that interest is not something the world passively delivers to us. It is something attention actively creates. When we attend to something, genuinely, willingly attend, we discover more in it than we expected. The apparently empty field turns out to have structure. The apparently routine conversation turns out to contain something human and particular. The apparently uninteresting task turns out to have aspects that reward close observation. This is not a trick of self-deception. It is a genuine perceptual discovery enabled by attention. Conversely, the mind that has learned to skim, to move restlessly across the surface of experience without ever settling, will find that everything becomes thin. Shallow attention produces a shallow world. The more habituated we become to rapid switching, to the constant provision of ready-made stimulation, to the outsourcing of the work of finding things interesting, the less capable we become of generating genuine engagement on our own. James saw this pattern emerging in his own era, the era of newspapers, popular entertainments, and the beginning of the commercial culture of distraction, and described it with remarkable foresight. He identified what he called passive attention, the kind of attention that is captured effortlessly by novelty, movement, and intensity, as distinct from active or voluntary attention, which requires effort and which is directed by the will rather than drawn by stimulation. Passive attention is easy. It requires nothing of us. Active attention is difficult. It involves holding the mind on something that is not inherently compelling long enough to discover what is compelling about it. The capacity for active attention, James argued, is not equally distributed and is not constant over time. It can be developed with practice, but it can also atrophy through disuse. His prescription for boredom was characteristically practical. He did not recommend simply sitting with discomfort until it passed, though he thought this had value. He argued more specifically that the development of genuine interests, deep, sustained engagements with particular domains, was one of the most important psychological achievements a person could make. The person with deep interests is rarely truly bored because their interests follow them into almost every situation, finding connections and relevances that the person without deep interests cannot see. The botanist is not bored in a field. The musician is not bored in a noisy cafe. The philosopher is not bored at a dinner party. There was also a moral dimension to James's account. In his talks to teachers and his lectures on the gospel of relaxation, he connected the epidemic of restlessness and boredom he observed to a broader cultural failure to cultivate inward resources, the kind of deep engagement with ideas, art, relationships, and experience that makes a person capable of sustaining their own inner life without constant external prompting. This, he thought, was not merely a personal problem but a civic one. A population that cannot sustain voluntary attention is a population that is easily manipulated, easily distracted from what matters, and incapable of the sustained effort that genuine democratic life requires. James wrote these observations before radio, before television, before the internet, before smartphones. The distraction economy he dimly perceived in the 1890s has grown into something far more powerful and far more precisely engineered to exploit exactly the vulnerabilities he described. His diagnosis has never been more relevant. The cure he proposed, the deliberate cultivation of active, voluntary attention as a practice, has never been more necessary. Subscribe to The Psychology of William James to explore more of his timeless ideas.